Mila Torres stepped lightly through the polished glass doors of the boutique, her heart beating with a quiet excitement that had nothing to do with spending money. Today, she was simply exploring, letting herself drift through the display cases filled with glittering treasures she rarely allowed herself to admire. The air inside smelled faintly of jasmine and polished wood, mingling with the delicate chime of a bell as other customers shuffled softly past. Mila was dressed casually, a comfortable sweater, dark jeans, and her warm brown eyes reflected the sparkling lights above. She smiled to herself, pleased to have a moment alone in a place she usually considered out of reach. At the center of the boutique was a velvet-lined tray, carefully holding a single ring, rare, with an intricate design of intertwined gold and diamonds. Mila couldn't help herself. She reached out and slipped the ring onto her finger, feeling the surprising weight of it settle comfortably. It was beautiful beyond words, and for a brief moment, she let herself imagine wearing it for real. Nearby, two boutique staff exchanged a glance. Their polite smiles were thinly veiled masks, and their eyes gleamed with unspoken judgment. Whispers floated faintly through the air, barely audible but cutting. "Just playing dress up again," one said under her breath, barely disguised sneer in her voice. Mila's smile faltered, a flush creeping to her cheeks. She caught their eyes, the silent accusation making her feel suddenly out of place. Uncertain, she began to remove the ring. Just as she turned toward the exit, a man in a tailored courier uniform approached, stepping carefully around the polished marble floor. Handing her a folded note in crisp handwriting, he said softly, "Don't leave. That ring is yours." Her heart skipped as she read the signature beneath, the name of her fiancé, the boutique's most valuable investor. Mila stood near the boutique's grand window, the handwritten note trembling slightly in her fingers, the paper thick and unmistakably genuine. Her gaze flicked upward, searching for confirmation, and her eyes landed on the courier, who offered a faint, respectful nod before retreating quietly, leaving the moment suspended in the glimmering air. The atmosphere shifted as the boutique staff caught sight of the note clasped in Mila's hand. Their earlier disdain flickered into a mixture of bewilderment and unease, a subtle but unmistakable crack in their confident facades. The woman with the controlled posture who had whispered, "Playing dress up," stared hard, lips pressed thin, before casting a glance toward the boutique manager. The manager, a tall woman with sharp features and impeccable attire, was clearly displeased yet struggling to maintain her composed facade. For a moment, the frosty barrier between Mila and the staff wavered under the weight of the unexpected revelation. Mila's pulse quickened, a complex knot of emotions tightening in her chest. Confusion mingled with a fresh flood of pride. She'd entered the boutique expecting nothing more than to admire, perhaps daydream a little, and faced with their quiet mockery, she'd felt small and unwelcome. Now, their sneers and whispers seemed to falter, replaced by hesitant glances that carried unspoken questions and reluctant acknowledgement. She pressed the note just a little closer, as if to shield it, drawing a quiet strength from the physical reminder of the promise it held. Around her, the murmur of other shoppers rose a notch, some stealing furtive glances, their curiosity piqued. A middle-aged couple paused nearby, exchanging soft words while discreetly observing Mila. Children clustered around a display further back, their wide eyes drawn toward the gleaming jewels as if sensing something charged in the air. Mila caught the eyes of a young woman gazing at her from across the room, a flicker of admiration visible there. The realization dawned, she was no longer invisible or an outsider. The room had begun to shift, subtly but decisively, a gentle pivot in her favor. Social judgments, so often harsh and unyielding, had loosened their grip. Still, the whisper of uncertainty lingered, knotting her stomach. Would they truly accept her? The boutique was a world apart, defined by unspoken rules of wealth and pedigree, and she had strayed into this space without invitation. Now she held a rare key, the note from her fiancé, the boutique's most valuable investor, but the question remained, was that enough to lift her into their world? The tall boutique manager, heels clicking softly against the terrazzo floor, moved toward Mila with measured steps. Her voice, when she spoke, was cool but less biting than before, tinged with reluctant acknowledgement. "Miss Torres," she said, eyes flickering briefly to the note before returning to Mila's face. "It's unusual to receive such a direct message within the boutique. May I ask if you plan to purchase the ring today?" Mila straightened, finding her voice steadier than she expected. "The ring was never about buying," she said carefully. "I was just trying it on, enjoying the moment. But now, I realize it means more than that." The manager's gloved fingers adjusted a ring on her own hand, a subtle display of measured control. "The ring is very rare. It's not merely jewelry but a symbol of standing. We value our clientele deeply." A faint murmur of agreement echoed from other staff nearby, some nodding discreetly, others still eyeing Mila with uncertain expressions. The implied message hung in the air like a delicate thread. Acceptance in this environment depended heavily on perceived status. Mila's cheeks flushed, but she met their cautious gazes with honesty. "Then perhaps it's time to reconsider what standing really means," she said softly. "For me, it's the person who loves me and makes a promise. Not where or how I shop." A flicker of surprise crossed the manager's face, quickly masked under a composed exterior. The room seemed to hold its breath as Mila's words hung quietly. Around them, the other customers resumed their browsing, but the energy remained charged. Some staff exchanged looks, quiet challenges in their eyes, questions unspoken but palpable. Will this young woman standing firm, despite their initial judgments, change their world? Or will she be pushed aside once more once the moment passed? Mila felt a swell of resilience bloom inside her. The stares and whispers that had attempted to diminish her before now seemed hollow, their power dimmed by the truth she carried quietly in her heart, the note, the love behind it, the acceptance she deserved. As she tucked the note safely into her purse, a tall man with a neat uniform appeared through the entrance and approached the counter. He carried a small, ornate ring box, its dark velvet harshly contrasting the boutique's bright gleam. With a nod toward the manager, he placed the box gently on the counter, its contents catching the light with a promise, the ring she had tried on, waiting for her acceptance. The room shifted again, whispers bubbled softly through small groups of patrons who turned their attention to the unfolding scene. The staff stood straighter, faces tightening with a mixture of professional caution and private amusement. The young woman who had admired Mila's quiet strength earlier now smiled gently, stepping closer as if to offer silent support. Mila glanced toward the exit again, the note burned in her mind, a call not just from her fiancé, but a challenge to her own doubts and hesitation. It was more than just a ring or a promise. It was a choice, palpable and pressing, to stay and claim respect or to retreat, abiding by the dismissive roles others had hastily assigned to her. With a slow breath and a lifting of her chin, Mila's fingers curled around the box on the counter. The ring's glittering facets seemed to dance in a way that spoke directly to her, a quiet invitation to embrace possibility. Beyond the boutique's windows, the city pulsed with life, indifferent and alive, a reminder that sometimes, the worlds we enter are shaped not just by geography but by courage. Mila took one last look at the staff, their faces a blur of restrained reactions, then faced forward toward the future quietly unfolding around her. Have you ever been judged unfairly? She wondered, not aloud, but as a steady current through her mind. What would it take to stand taller, to challenge those assumptions and find your own place? The choice was hers now, and whatever came next, this moment marked a turning point. The ring box felt heavier than its size would suggest, as if it carried not just gold and diamonds but the weight of uncertain expectations. Mila's fingers hesitated over the velvet cushion, her eyes flickering to the boutique staff who watched her like a silent jury weighing her worth. The earlier sneers had softened but not vanished, replaced instead by a wary curiosity and guarded restraint. Mila's mind raced. The note from her fiancé was a lifeline, a confirmation of something deeper than appearances. Still, doubts seeped through. Was she truly welcome here, beyond this moment, beyond the ring? Or was this a fleeting gesture overshadowed by the invisible barriers crafted by whispered judgments and habits born of privilege? A faint tremor passed through her hands, her breath catching for a brief second before settling again. She told herself that this was her moment, unshackled from assumptions, embraced by the sincerity of love. The boutique manager stepped closer, her polished voice carrying a nuance of challenge. "Ms. Torres, your fiancé is well known to us. His support is invaluable. Yet, acceptance among our community depends on more than promises. It requires a grace and understanding of our world." Mila met the manager's steady gaze without flinching. "Then help me understand," she said quietly. "Not as someone who doesn't belong, but as someone willing to learn what respect means here." A flicker of surprise crossed the manager's face, though it was quickly masked beneath her composed countenance. The staff shifted uneasily, exchanging subtle glances. The boutique, a place of pristine elegance and rigid social lines, had been disturbed, if only slightly, by Mila's steady resolve. The courier who had delivered the note lingered near the entrance, appearing more like a discreet guardian than a mere messenger. Then, as if to deepen the unfolding story, he stepped forward and spoke softly. "Mr. David Moore requested that the note reach Ms. Torres today. He wanted her to have the ring here, now. Not tomorrow, not after some formal process, but here." The manager raised a brow, quietly indicating that this was unusual, perhaps even improper. Yet the message had been delivered, and the boutique staff could hardly argue with the authority behind it. Mila's gaze drifted briefly to the ring still nestled in the box. It was beautiful, yes, but now it carried a symbolism that transcended physical value, a gesture of love insisting on acknowledgement. Her thoughts flickered to David. He was a man of quiet confidence, a successful investor whose name whispered through the circles that Mila often found elusive. He was never boastful, never loud. Yet his affection for Mila was clear, enduring. This gesture was his way of telling the world, and perhaps most importantly, telling her, that she belonged, no matter what anyone else thought. Still, within Mila, shadows of self-doubt lingered. Could love truly bridge the invisible gaps between worlds? Was this simple ring truly a key or merely a token, unable to unlock the deeper respect she sought? The manager's eyes softened for a moment, and she spoke again, a touch more gentle. "You face judgments here, Ms. Torres, not to shame but because this world is guarded. Rare treasures are symbols, they carry weight beyond their beauty. If you see the ring merely as jewelry, you may miss what it represents." Mila nodded slowly. "I understand. But symbols can also change meaning. They can be reclaimed or redefined by those who wear them." A ripple of murmurs passed among the staff. Some seemed intrigued, others guarded. The tension in the air tightened like the strings of a delicate instrument. Mila's heart pounded, a mix of fear and rising determination. She thought of the times she had faced silent dismissals in her own life, at school, at work, even among acquaintances who assumed too much about her. If she let those moments define her, she would never rise. Her hand finally closed around the ring box. As the velvet cushion shifted, her fingers brushed the cold metal of the band, its surface smooth beneath her touch. She drew a slow breath, the spark of decision glowing brighter. Suddenly, the ambient hum in the boutique softened as a deep voice spoke from the entrance. "Is that my ring I see?" All heads turned toward the source of the voice, and Mila's breath caught again. David Moore stepped inside, his presence commanding but calm. He scanned the room, taking in faces that ranged from surprise to tentative respect. His eyes found Mila's, a silent exchange passing between them, a mixture of pride, support, and tenderness. David crossed the boutique floor, his footsteps measured yet purposeful. The staff stood upright, their composure wavering as the man, so rarely seen here, made his entrance. He addressed them with quiet authority. "I wanted this moment to be clear. Mila is not here as a guest or a visitor. She is here because she belongs. Not by my name or status, but by who she is. The boutique manager's lips parted, as if to protest, but no words came. The staff murmured quietly, some exchanging glances that betrayed a simmering mix of concession and hesitation. Mila's chest swelled with relief, gratitude, and a newly kindled confidence. She stood a little taller, the ring no longer just a piece of exquisite craftsmanship but a symbol of belonging and affirmation fought for and won. David extended a hand toward the ring box. "Shall we make it official, Mila?" Her voice was steady when she replied, "Yes." With deliberate care, David lifted the ring and slid it onto Mila's finger. The diamonds caught the light, scattering tiny rainbows across the boutique's polished surfaces. There was an almost palpable shift in the room. The cheers of silent approval replaced the earlier murmur of judgment. Shoppers smiled, some whispering congratulations, others simply nodding with respect. For Mila, the moment crystallized into something far greater than a ring on her finger, the bridge between worlds, the triumph of quiet resolve over doubt, the embodiment of love's promise. Still, beneath the surface, the stakes felt higher than ever. This was not the end but a beginning, a test of how far courage and authenticity could push past entrenched prejudices. The boutique manager stepped toward Mila and David, her tone softer now. "Welcome, Miss Torres. We will see you again." Mila caught the sincerity in her voice, mingled with reluctant respect, and simply nodded. Her smile was genuine, born not of victory over others but of a hard-won peace. As she and David made their way toward the door, the young woman who had earlier admired Mila's courage approached discreetly. "You were amazing," she whispered, her eyes shining. "Thank you for standing up." Mila's heart lifted, knowing this ripple of change mattered, small as it might seem. Outside, the city hummed and thrummed, a vast, indifferent world, but now it felt a little smaller, a little kinder. As they walked side by side, Mila thought of the quiet power of moments like this, moments where courage met love, where respect was demanded not by wealth but by integrity. She glanced at David, squeezing his hand. "Thank you for believing in me." He smiled, warmth radiating in his gaze. "Always." The question that lingered softly in Mila's mind was no longer if she belonged, but how brightly she would shine in the days to come. Will Mila's quiet strength inspire others to challenge their own doubts? What would you do to claim your own place in a world that often judges too quickly, too harshly? The evening light streaked through the boutique's towering windows as Mila stood near the center of the room, feeling all eyes upon her. The air was thick with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The atmosphere was as fragile as the rare gems on display just feet away. The staff, who had once dismissed her with thinly veiled contempt, now exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to proceed. The transformation within the boutique was evident, roles had been upended, and for a moment, the carefully maintained balance of judgment and exclusion seemed to teeter. Mila's fingers brushed the engagement ring once again, the warmth of the gold a steady comfort against the coolness of the boutique's marble floor. She felt the silent challenge in the eyes watching her, each gaze weighing her presence, testing her worth. But underlying the scrutiny was something else, a reluctant admiration slowly blossoming into respect. She inhaled deeply and, with a quiet strength, addressed the manager, whose polished demeanor was strained but still unbroken. "I would like to officially try on the ring," Mila said, her voice steady. "And I ask to be treated with the same respect afforded to your other clients." A murmur rippled through the staff, but no one offered resistance. The tense anticipation hung thick until the gentle chime of the boutique door signaled a new arrival. Heads turned as David Moore entered, his composed stature immediately commanding attention. He moved with a certainty that cut through the tension, stepping confidently toward Mila. "I thought you might need some company," David said, his voice calm but firm. His eyes locked with Mila's in a quiet exchange full of reassurance and unwavering support. The boutique manager's expression faltered briefly as she met David's gaze. There was an unmistakable edge to his presence, a subtle but clear reminder of the power and influence he wielded within these walls. The staff straightened, some bowing their heads in acknowledgement, others exchanging quick, nervous glances. David approached the counter, his gaze sweeping across the assembled staff, his tone measured but unmistakable. Mila has more than earned her place here. I stand by her not as a token, but because she is the woman I love, with a strength unmatched by any jewel in this store. A hush fell over the boutique as David's words echoed. The atmosphere shifted once again, as if a fragile glass had been cracked, letting light spill into shadowed corners where prejudice once lingered. One of the younger staff members, a woman with a kind face who had earlier offered Mila a supportive smile, stepped forward. "Mr. Moore, it's an honor to meet you." David nodded, acknowledging her with quiet respect. Then, turning back to Mila, he gestured toward the ring box on the counter. "Shall we?" Mila felt a surge of emotion as David took the ring from the velvet box and slid it onto her finger with gentle precision. The diamonds caught the light in a dazzling display, reflecting the moment's significance far beyond their brilliance. "You belong here, Mila," David said softly. "Not because of wealth or status, but because you are you." The boutique manager inhaled deeply, then offered a subtle nod, acceptance final yet tempered by the complex social codes she represented. Witnessing the transformation was a small crowd of shoppers. Initially skeptical glances softened into smiles, whispers of admiration filled the space as Mila's courage and the couple's quiet dignity unfolded. The moment rippled through the boutique like a gentle tide reshaping the shores. The staff's earlier judgment seemed fragile now, their confidence shaken by the undeniable truth of Mila's place, both within this space and in David's heart. Outside the boutique, the city hummed with its endless activity, unaware of the quiet revolution unfolding inside the glittering walls. Mila caught David's eye, her own shining with a mixture of relief and triumph. "Thank you for standing by me," she whispered. David's smile was tender. "There is no one I would rather stand by." As they prepared to depart, the boutique manager approached them, her tone transformed. "Ms. Torres, we will see you again," she said. There was an edge of genuine respect beneath her polished exterior, a subtle but sincere acknowledgement of Mila's rightful place. The young woman who had admired Mila earlier lingered by the exit, meeting her gaze with a smile. "You changed something here today," she said. Mila nodded, warmth rising in her chest. "Maybe," she replied softly, "but it's only the beginning." As they stepped out into the fading light of dusk, Mila felt the quiet power of the evening settle within her, a promise that despite prejudice and doubt, the path ahead held new possibilities. Who among us has faced moments where courage is tested by unspoken rules and harsh judgments? How might standing firm, even quietly, reshape the spaces we move through? The story continued to unfold around Mila and David, but the transformation born of love and resilience lingered like a whispered promise in the air. Stay with us to discover how this journey reaches its crescendo and see who truly gains in the end. Mila stepped out of the boutique's gleaming glass doors with an air of quiet triumph, the rare engagement ring, a delicate weave of gold and diamonds, glinting on her finger like a beacon of something far greater than mere luxury. The city breathed around her, vibrant and indifferent, yet inside, Mila felt an unmistakable shift. She walked beside David Moore, whose steady presence was a solid anchor amid the tide of emotions sweeping through her. Her steps were lighter now, unburdened by the whispers and judgments that had clung to her moments before like heavy chains. The ring, once an object of others' scorn when she tried it on, just for fun, now symbolized a profound acceptance and vindication. It was a tangible confirmation of love, resilience, and the quiet strength she had summoned to claim her rightful place. Behind her, inside the boutique, the ripples of today's events stirred murmurs among the staff and patrons alike. Some whispered with a newfound respect for the woman who had stood tall against dismissiveness. Others, those who had mocked or doubted her, now found their reputations quietly diminished. Word traveled swiftly among the regular clientele. Trust and kindness held far more weight in their luxury world than the shallow prejudices once voiced in hushed tones. The boutique manager, who had initially met Mila with cold reservation, now carried a more reflective demeanor. In private conversations with colleagues, she acknowledged, perhaps for the first time, the cost of assumptions and the power of sincere human connection to break through ingrained barriers. She resolved that the staff would approach future customers with less haste to judge and more willingness to understand. Mila's heart swelled with the knowledge that her victory wasn't merely personal, it was a subtle but profound shift in a small corner of the world, changing hearts and minds through the undeniable force of courage and grace. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Mila and David paused at a quiet cafe nearby, the hum of normal life offering a gentle counterpoint to the day's extraordinary moments. Mila looked down at the ring again, her fingers tracing its intricate design as she reflected on how far she had come, from the initial moments of discomfort and mockery to now, embraced and celebrated. David reached across the table, his hand warm and reassuring as it found hers. "You were incredible," he said softly, admiration shining in his eyes. "You didn't just accept what was given, you demanded respect on your own terms." Mila smiled, the tension easing from her shoulders. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "But I realized that no one else could define my worth. That had to come from within." He nodded, the silence between them comfortable and full of meaning. Their conversation drifted into dreams and plans, the future shimmering brighter with the newfound confidence Mila carried. The ring was no longer simply an adornment, it was a promise lived, a story shared, a bond unbreakable. Back in the boutique, the staff prepared for the next day, their attitudes quietly transformed. The young woman who had sincerely praised Mila's courage spoke with warmth to a colleague about the power of kindness and understanding. Even the manager's tone had softened, rippling through the team like gentle waves of change. Mila's presence had planted a seed, one that might grow into more openness, more compassion, and fewer assumptions. As the sun set, casting a golden glow across the city, Mila and David strolled hand in hand, the engagement ring a luminous symbol of their shared journey and the battles bravely won. Have you ever faced moments where you had to claim your worth? How did you find the strength to rise above? Feel free to share your thoughts. If Mila's story inspired you, remember to subscribe for more original and emotionally resonant journeys. Thank you for watching. See you in our next story.